Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. Thank you for joining us. My name is Dawn Van Dam, and I am president of 1 Million Solutions in Health. Today, I'm pleased to announce that we're presenting a webinar entitled Innovations in Memory Care. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about our organization, and then I will introduce you to our speaker for today. So our goal at 1 Million Solutions in Health is to improve healthcare one solution at a time, getting to perhaps 1 million ideas or solutions or more. And we're doing this through three different areas. One is the area of life sciences, the second is healthcare, and the third is ideas from patients and consumers. So today is very much an idea related to the healthcare segment and to the segment for patients and consumers. So we're hoping that you will share this information with those in your network and other people that you know. We will be recording this event so that lots of people can watch it and listen to it and understand it afterwards. A little bit more about 1 Million Solutions in Health. Our goal is to do three things: to connect, to help people learn and share, and to innovate. So in the area of connecting, this is an opportunity for you to connect with others working on initiatives around the globe to improve healthcare, accelerate life sciences research, and share patient and consumer-focused ideas and solutions. In the area of learning and sharing, we'd like you to join our community to learn and share your knowledge and ideas through events, discussion forums, articles, videos, etc., and then help evaluate new science and technology initiatives by commenting through the blogs and discussion forums, etc., etc. And the third area, innovate, we'd like you to send us your ideas, whether you're from academia, government, entrepreneur, a business, and we'll work with you to see how we can share your ideas with our global community. So that's a little bit about us, and you'll see more happening over the next couple of months, so please participate as much as possible. So for today's webinar, it's entitled, as I said, Innovations in Memory Care. So let me just give you a little bit of information about our speaker for today. Our speaker is Rochelle Blau, and Rochelle is a certified recreational therapist, a certified dementia practitioner, and currently serves as Vice President of Life Enrichment and Innovation for Bay Bridge Senior Living. Rochelle has served as the National Director of Assisted Living and Memory Care Resident Enrichment Programming previously for a senior living company. Rochelle Blau also served as Assistant Vice President of Quality of Life Programs and Corporate Director of Memory Care Services for a group of skilled nursing communities. While serving in that capacity, she assisted in the creation and standardization of memory care services for 10 skilled nursing communities in the Chicago area. Prior to that, Rochelle served as Regional Director of Memory Care and Program Manager for another senior living company, which involves support and training for the assisted living coordinators, activities and volunteer coordinators, and Alzheimer's program directors for over 100 communities in the Midwest and Canada. Rochelle Blau is also an approved instructor to teach the course for NCCDP, which allows individuals to be eligible to apply for a certified dementia practitioner license. So with no further ado, I'm going to turn over the baton, so to speak, to Rochelle and let her give you this very insightful presentation today, because the list of accomplishments by Rochelle can go on, but really who else would be a better person to talk about such a topic? She'll be offering real-life stories and examples about memory care and showing us how it is possible for someone with memory problems to lead the life they wish to live. In fact, it's Bay Bridge's practice, which is centered around you do the living, we do the rest, and their dedication to serving seniors with outstanding service and a drive to celebrate the gift of human life every day, which Rochelle will be talking about today. So with no further ado, over to you, Rochelle. Thank you.
Dawn, thank you. I appreciate the chance to be able to be with some other passionate professionals on the line today. Can you hear me okay, Dawn?
Yep, perfectly. And actually one thing just let them know this, is if anyone has any questions for Rochelle, I will be asking her the questions at the end of the session, so please just put them into the chat box and I'll gather them all up and answer them. And then also at the end, we'll have a survey that we'd like everyone to fill out to give us feedback on this presentation. So thanks, Rochelle, and we can hear you great.
All right, wonderful. Well, I think for anyone who's made the time to join, there's a reason and perhaps a passion you hold to help individuals living with memory loss and just continue lifelong learning. So thank you again. And I always appreciated, no matter 30 minutes, an 8-hour day, a week-long training, one of my favorite leaders that I've met along the way in the senior living industry used to tee everything up by saying, you know, as you partake in this learning opportunity, if you walk away with 2 or 3 nuggets of wisdom that you might be able to use in your tool belt, it was worthwhile. So that's my hope for you today, you know, and in some instances, I imagine some of the professionals on the line, in other capacities, this call could be validation, and that's sometimes a good thing too when we hear many ideas that we know in some component we are doing ourselves. So it's good validation as well. So today I look forward to providing some overview and information about a program that we're excited in helping residents live the best days they can, and that we are calling our Flourish Together program. In addition, I look to share a little bit about some examples of a technique and approach that, again, will resonate with some of you, and components of it we've all done in some ways, but you'll see some potentially new twists that may help us in the way we communicate with residents living with memory loss. And in addition, I'm a storyteller, so there will be some threaded practical examples and stories and ways that we have had some opportunities to see that these concepts can and possibly for yourselves may impact residents and make a difference. We'll wrap up with a summary and closing with some questions and answers. So the kind of opening thought I have for you, which I bet we could all sit around someday and just could talk forever if we had the time, about this question. Is there a particular resident maybe that sticks out for you, someone, if you are a professional in the industry that you've served, who's lived with memory loss, who's really just seared on your heart, and then the question might be why? You know, so many people, I think back to my very first job, and I had the honor of working in an environment. It was a skilled nursing setting back in the 90s, early 90s, and we were very proud of ourselves in innovation even back then that there was a stop sign on the door that would tell the individuals with memory loss to turn around. And some of you may remember some of those very preliminary nuances in the industry back when we were all still trying to put our heads together. And behind that door lived 23 individuals. And I can still picture their faces. I can picture Annabelle and Vernon and Foster and Arthur and their stories, and Edna. And I'm going to just take a minute quickly and mention a few folks, and I'm sure, again, you all have a million of these individuals as well. Edna was probably the first time it struck me that no book, no textbook, no webinar, no class, no credential, no degree was going to prepare us until you lived and experienced the human response, the body language, the range of which could happen in someone's emotion due to this brain disorder that they lived with and kind of being trapped in that setting. So Edna for me was just this beautiful black hair, which was natural, which for us women cannot always be the case, and big glistening brown eyes, smiling, life of the party, could work out and just crack a joke and enjoy most of her day, and was so friendly. And yet I knew nothing about her story. I didn't know what job she held. I didn't know how many children she had. And it took time because in that instance, at that time, much of this information resided in the chart, which could have been locked in the nurse's station. So really, even that evolution and how we as professionals can get this information out and living in the hands of our team members every single day, all of those nuances that shape each person. And Edna each afternoon would have what we all know as sundowning and would become catastrophically distraught, unconsolable. That stop sign was no deterrent for her. She was going to find her way home. And I just remember being so challenged and impassioned even then, so many years ago, thinking there has got to be a way. There's got to be a way we can support beyond trying to redirect Edna to her favorite cookie, and I need your help, could you come help me with this activity? And I think back, in a way, I'm kind of ashamed, but that was all I knew then, was to redirect, and I felt, I think we've come a long way, and I look forward, hopefully today, to share some of those instances. I also mentioned 2 other residents by name who you'll hear about later today. Mama Lou, this individual up on the slide reminds me of Mama Lou. She was also a ham and a jokester and would use humor and banter to try to get me to let her out. She'd say, hey, kid, you know I got to get going. I got to get home and make dinner and have a cocktail poured for my husband. So those little relationships we have, you know, and just shape us to who we are as professionals. And then I'll wrap up by leaving a little cliffhanger that as we close today, I will tell you more about an individual who also I felt trained and taught me more than any class, and his name was Elliot. So I look forward later to telling you more about him. I think this is a good exercise, if any of you have direct reports or staff, to get people talking about residents who've touched their heart in a special way and why. We've challenged ourselves to build the connection to why we do what we do through our assignment sheets, through daily huddle meetings, not letting residents become tasks. Having recognition programs where team members are encouraged to list someone they've touched in a special way using their name and their name as well as the resident's name they've touched and what they did to touch them, and having recognition available in personalized ways, which I look forward to telling you more about here shortly. So moving on, another capacity that sometimes I think when I hear the word memory care, to me, initially, it meant that we're going to help people who may need to live in a residential setting who have already progressed in their journey and their brain disorder. However, one of the things I've been excited about in my current capacity is many senior living companies, I think, are moving to this route, is that we want to be dedicated to keeping our active seniors healthy, keeping brain health as a priority through programming initiatives, through much research that many of us have probably heard about in different capacities, exercise classes, opportunities for volunteerism. Very interesting, you know, there's so many correlations and evidence to impacting lifelong wellness and longevity with some of those opportunities. I found some great information through the book Aging with Grace with David Snowden, which has been around the industry for quite a while, and found some very interesting thoughts on this topic in that book years ago that struck me and kind of always inspired me to keep thinking on this topic. So I have a little exercise for you. If you're sitting at your desk and, you know, have a moment to take a pen and a piece of paper if it would interest you to participate, and we'll do this very quickly, Dawn, about 10 seconds or so, but just to kind of provoke your thinking on how powerful the brain really is. And we go back to when we were all in school in the kindergarten years and learning our alphabet, and then learned to form words that had meaning, and then we learned to memorize and sequence, and all of these steps we almost take for granted. Well, now what I'd like to ask you to do, if we were going to actually do this as a cognitive mind aerobic exercise class, I would start the timer and I would have the residents work together, and I would ask them now to begin to retrieve and list. So we take the months that our brain now has processed that we can do in order: January, February, March, April, May, June, and so forth. We could probably recite that in less than 10 seconds very comfortably. Now what I'd like to ask you each to just try to challenge your brain, and try not to ignore the rest of the session if you get into this exercise, but go ahead and take a quick second and try to put these months now in alphabetical order. So go ahead and just for a quick moment, if you would, like to kind of humor yourself and find for just a second how that will be to try to reprocess information in alphabetical order. Okay, well, just to keep us flowing, I imagine that you might have realized it's pretty hard. It is truly asking the brain to work in a new, unusual way, and it takes time, and it's reprocessing information. And then over time, what we would do is have the residents continue to try to retrieve that information more efficiently and faster with timed retrievals and so forth. So that's just one of many examples. There's much research on creativity, giving back and doing for others, but having different components in our senior living industry helping residents keep their memory and brain health is so important. So it's been exciting that that's been a priority, as I'm sure it is for many of you. I now would like to reference two documents that I really think are the foundation. So as we go through these points today that our senior living organization has chose to practically apply the concepts of person-centered care, I think, again, some of them will resonate with you in some capacity, but I think many of us have small variations, which is some of the fun of the work we do, doing our best to come up with tools in our tool belts that could help residents. These two documents, I use sometimes interesting analogies, but I do believe in many instances there is a recipe. Let's say, for instance, we were going to make a cake. If the foundational recipe to create the standard cake of what does the industry believe we mean by saying person-centered care, those documents live and are available at these two links through the Alzheimer's Society and then as well in the Alzheimer's Association. The Alzheimer's Society document, I believe, is approximately 62 pages long and very in-depth, provides an overview of what should long-term care or residences for folks living with memory loss, what should they look like. And then in addition, the same capacity, the Campaign for Quality Care with the Alzheimer's Association in many instances has a couple of different components to it, but again, gives some of the foundational work. If we're all working on these same concepts of person-centered care, naturally, they may start to look a little bit alike because we are all doing what we've been charged by think tanks and work groups of dietitians and nurses and social workers and administrators and recreation specialists coming together to say, what do we believe is the best of the best out there? So to me, in many instances, this would be our foundation of the cake, and then the beautiful gift of senior living and serving people with memory loss is I actually tried to Google it at one point just for humor's sake and tried to find how many different kinds of cake there are, and it's, as you can imagine, unprecedented, thousands and thousands of cakes that could be out there with different fillings and frostings and decorations, and I believe that's what each of us do, and I look to share a little bit of our approach and recipe today with you. So we, together with a group of shareholders comprised of various people with passion to look at what might be possible, collaboratively did some surveys, meeting arrangements, working together to understand and come up with our guiding vision and philosophy for the memory care model in this senior living exercise and example we shared today. BayBridge is committed to creating opportunities all day for everyone to flourish. I believe every organization has mission statements, and it's most important, how do you apply these? How do you make these live in the day-to-day fabric? And so the key word here, actually there's two, everyone and flourish. I'm really excited to tell you about a couple of nuances that I think have really been coming alive for us in our senior living environment. So I'll go through some points of excellence, which I would say maybe might be the recipe, the unique variations that get added to those foundational references we all should all do. These are some of the examples that have come alive in the memory care model for one senior living company, which may just lend for some thoughts. So, for example, as I mentioned the word everyone in the guiding mission or philosophy, this is exciting to me, to really begin to think and learn deeply. What I remember back in the 90s, and I remember the social history was pretty basic, and we might fill in a religion or a job or a daughter. We might check some interest hobbies if someone liked to macrame or weave baskets or read books or exercise in their free time. And I believe all of us collectively have tried to come together and understand, what do we need to know about someone that we may serve them best, honor their preferences, and allow them to live in a way they may flourish. So within our organization, we've designed a discovery process, and here is the twist. This discovery process is carried out for residents, families, and team members, and that, I believe, has some exciting potential. So, for example, the residents, we learn and understand, and we go deep, as I'm sure if many of you might be in the industry do the same, but we do want to understand beyond hobbies. What shapes you? What are some life-defining events that you've experienced? And maybe it's the daughter who has to help us know these if the resident can't share themselves. But those things present in the disease, as I'm sure we've all experienced. Traumas and rewards and wonderful things they've experienced can present, and it's so important to know those. Maybe what is something a resident hopes to do and just hasn't had the chance to get to it yet? Those types of provoking questions are also important. And we take that information and we begin to have it live as a culture. We have a process called a resident discovery snapshot, just as I'm sure many organizations you may all work for have some component that somewhere lies in the same, but it allows everyone, every single person, administrator, housekeeper, part-time weekend desk person, person in the dining room, each equal team member, no one more important, knows all of this important information about our residents. Who were teachers, who were police officers, who had a PhD, what are their likes and what are their dislikes. Quick reference material is provided for every single team member so that they can have personalized interactions with our residents. Our more recent open community made a Flourish board in the break room that obviously is in a confidential and protected location where they showcase this information. And I'm excited to also share a little bit about how that can be built into the training culture. So many of us are busy doing book work, but so many neat ways you can build resident stories and learning about residents into training as well. Family members, knowing that daughter who's the sandwich generation rushing in to have that difficult meeting with us and knowing she loves a crisp cold Diet Coke or a stiff cup of black hot coffee, knowing those things and just seeing that look on that daughter's face, sometimes those little, how did you know? It reminds me a little bit of hotel travel. Some of us, I'm sure, do it quite a bit, and knowing if where we prefer our room, and those little preferences do make such the difference to know. Even planning social events for our family members, really taking into consideration, what are your family members' favorite hot drinks, favorite cold drinks? When are we going to see you the most? So we've really learned and tried to build and learn those important pieces of information about family. And then obviously with team members, what is the way you'd like to be recognized or honored? So asking if you were receiving recognition, do you want it in a group setting? Would that embarrass you? Would you rather be alone? What are some of their favorites? Do they prefer a good cheeseburger or perhaps a smoothie? What's a favorite flower? What's something they'd want us to know about them to coach them and help them be successful? So this type of information is gathered and, again, is honored and encouraged to be carried out on a monthly basis in each of our communities. So the discovery process really is the foundation of person-centered care, and as you can imagine, living that out and trying to instill that for our team members then in turn models and teaches what we will hope they'll be excited to do for their residents as well. I'd like to share a little bit about our storybook. Our storybook is our effort to allow family members to know who they've entrusted their loved ones with. That probably could be pretty scary. I'm kind of going through this myself personally, and you think about your parent and someone's going into their private home, or now you're moving them to a senior living residence and knowing this person will care for your loved one. I believe it gives such peace to just know a little bit about who that person is. A picture, a bio, what they stand for, what are their interests and hobbies, and I believe, again, it allows families to feel a little bit of comfort over time that we all want to be in relationship. And as we come up with tools and ways for relationships to flourish, it really makes a difference. In addition, this is the approach that I had mentioned as we began today, and I talked about some of the residents who might sear into your heart or have touched you or taught you what no class could. The Preventative Reassurance Program kind of speaks for itself in the title, is exactly that, preventative versus intervention. And I feel that for a very long time, many of us in the field, there are so many techniques and great successes that already exist. But we want to continue to do anything in our capability to take the intimate information we learn through the discovery and plan to have reassurances that could be available to a resident all day through verbal, visual, or support and comfort prompts to try to support a sense of contentment versus not necessarily having to wait till we see agitation and then responding to agitation, or what in the past many of us had heard coined as behaviors. I know most of us today now look at that as communication and as unmet needs. So we as leaders might recognize that what used to be called behaviors is just an unmet need. How do we instill that and get every person who is providing the care to think that way? So I have another little story here of Justina. She was a wonderful woman who I enjoyed as a friend and got to know well, helping her, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 years ago. And she would, again, just a lovely, peaceful, contented woman, very faith-based. You could tell her faith was important to her. She would knit contently, love to be helpful. But again, about 1:30, she would say, my God, why must you forsake me? And with shaking, her whole body shaking, she would come to us in terror and just distraught as if the burglar had just broken her home and taken the $700 she was going to need to pay her mortgage. And after all she'd already survived in her mind, she had survived concentration camps and horrors. How could this be? And I watched the common sense and the bag of tricks and the little tool belt that, again, each of us have done in some capacity. The insightful, wonderful coordinator said, Justina, I had a message for you. I thought I already gave it to you, but it must have been my mistake. I was supposed to remind you, Mike Smith, of course, names are changed for confidentiality. Mike called and wanted, oh, my son called? I was supposed to let you know that all monies over the amount of $500 will be kept in the safe and can be accessed, and Mike knows how to access it at any time you'll need it. And you would just see the sense of relief wash over her. And I would say in some instances, sometimes caregiving can feel a little selfish because we receive that hero moment where the resident is so excited and gives you the big hug that you have information they're looking for. So I watched, and that kind of, again, was something I filed away, how we learn these little cycles of the common things that they may talk about, and how can we come up with reassuring statements that could be provided instead of waiting till they're already upset, provide those ongoing. So one thing I want to mention, which I would imagine we all realize, that this isn't intending to be any kind of medical advice. It's just person-centered care, in that we realize various approaches must always be individualized. And it really could take the whole interdisciplinary team, including the family and the doctor, and everyone coming together to determine if a technique like this may help someone have a better day. So again, I kind of say here, it's a little bit of what many of us have probably been doing over time with common sense. However, some little twists and tweaks that we add a little bow to the package, that we will share a couple of tips that we believe have been really making a difference in helping some of our residents with memory loss live the best days, flourishing whenever they can. So as I've already kind of provided the overview, trying to understand common fixations or concerns that can be coming up by gathering detailed information, working to build a plan, and having statements that could help to alleviate what would have presented as distress. The fixations, I'm sure many of us are very familiar with. I don't have money. I've got to find my purse or my wallet. I've got to get out of here. I've got to go home. I've got to find the car. I have to get to work. I've got to find my husband, my child, or my wife. You know, I believe when a resident is still verbal and can at least give us the information, what a gift we have there. And so for many of us over the years and our practical experiences, I'm sure we've all had different residents for different lengths of times where those fixations may stay. And so again, we start to see those patterns, and we prepare the team at the huddle meeting, in the care plan, to be aware of reassuring statements we may try. Maybe we start to see a little difference in the body language, and so we try to be as preventative as possible. This obviously doesn't replace any of the important techniques we've all gathered over the years. So many wonderful things in the industry that we all, try our best. We always will keep the foundational recipe having empathy, compassion, preparing the staff to listen, trying to understand what it must feel like, really working on sensitivity training for the staff, going through those steps before we try to re-engage a resident. So I feel like from back when I began in the 90s till now, we've come so far not to discount someone who's distraught looking for their daughter to redirect them, but take all these steps. And then this technique I'm sharing today was just one more component we've added and seen some real nice response. Just another tool in our tool belt to consider. So after getting the information, learning the history, it's now time to begin to think about if this approach could be right. Would this be something that might be best typed, audio or visual recording, depending on where the resident's abilities and needs are? The statement should be truthful and supportive, utilizing names that might help build credibility. So if it's the daughter and you can use the full first and last name, if it's a doctor that you can use the actual name, I believe I've watched kind of this sense of relief in a resident's face that, boy, they have some information about me. This care provider should partner with the family, so again, we're really streamlined on what we believe might be the approach, and that no family would be surprised or shocked if we're trying a technique. You'll see here it states it could be as simple as having a typed statement in a clean, easy-to-read font in a Times New Roman .18 we found to be, a nice, user-friendly, easy-to-read approach. And also it can be photocopied so that these statements could be provided and given throughout the day. I wanted to share, we did this training with some caregiving team a while ago in my career, and we passed out greeting cards that each team member could write to a resident they thought may benefit from this, and a really nice legible handwriting to write a reassuring statement. They wish they could just soothe and comfort them all day, but they wrote it down. And one team member gave it to their resident, and she had copies of this reassuring reminder that she would keep in her piles of them in her purse, and she would pull them out to look at. And, it was just really neat to see the staff experience success when they personalized what they learned in class. Let the person know we have a message, and we would, if it's appropriate, I can think, going as organic of having a voicemail that a daughter left and helping that daughter say, keep it high level, Mom, I love you, you're safe, you're in the right place with all those nice people, and I want you to wait till I can meet you there. Everything is paid for. I love you, Mom. Something as simple as that could be played over and over on a voicemail, but I will share some other examples that can be used. I did want to note that we're not necessarily in any way encouraging reality orientation. At one time in a training this technique, some team member misinterpreted and was starting to dip back into what many of us knew in reality orientation. And I think we would want to be real careful, that we're just trying to improve residents' days and keeping reassuring statements that are helpful but not hurtful. Using the statements throughout the whole day versus waiting until someone shows the distress. That has probably been the nugget that we hone in on the most in the staff training for the caregiving team. The statements obviously may need to change over time as the person changes. It's encouraged if we find that the technique does provide relief, that we begin to involve and let everyone who gives care know this and to know where they access it. Is it going to be a voice recording on an iPad? Is it the voicemail? Is it the written notes that they can find at the nursing station? And many of us, hopefully, we may not have nursing stations anymore, which is a good gift as we move through culture transformation, but wherever that central location might be that team members can access information. So here's some examples, again, very personalized to people, and these would change with the real story of real residents. Ruby, your daughter wanted me to remind you, she'll meet you here. She said you are welcome to help those nice people where you are, and she said everything is paid, and for her, it's important to know the coffee is free. You can rest in room 301 until I can get there. Signed, and then it may depend who would sign it, would have the most credibility. Mr. Leitner, your son wanted me to remind you that Dr. Solomon has asked that you stay with us to gain that strength, and we're here to help you with whatever you need. He wants to encourage you to exercise and eat right. Your son wanted me to remind you everything's paid for and you can rest in 214 whenever you need to. Your friends at XYZ or whoever would be the right name of credibility. Dad, I wanted to remind you of the new policy of monies over 500 being kept in a secure location. I know how to access this money for you. Everything is paid for, and I'll meet you where you are. I love you, Dad. Remember, you're never alone. Just as you taught us, God is always by your side. Love your son, Tom. So that would be an example of pulling on someone's faith if that were an important coping technique for them. Mom, Dr. Momheim wanted to remind you of the very nice lady that would be there to help you rinse and take that nice warm shower, and it's paid for. She wanted you to do this so we can help you get your skin healed, and I know you'd want to feel better, and I do too. Love your daughter, Michelle. So these were just some examples that may provide comfort and soothing, contentment, and relief if provided in various capacities for residents. In addition to the reassuring approach, we have built in some personalized techniques that, again, this may be some validation. Many of us in the person-centered care technique of helping people with memory loss are doing some component of a lot of these, but good validation we're all on the right track. We have been committed to offering to support and partner with each family member if they place a loved one that will create a personalized About Me conversation book and a personalized 5-cent Flourish kit. And those prompts in the books could be things that we'll never know, even from a social history. Ask my mom to sing you Amazing Grace. She was the director of the choir. Ask my mom to tell you about winning Teacher of the Year in '72. She loves to tell the story. Ask my mom to tell you what she found at the cottage, the picture above her bed when we looked under the bed, and you'll hear the story of the tarantula, and she'll get a good laugh. The 5 Senses kit is, again, based around comfort and life story and what were preferences. We all have the ability, most of the time, to soothe ourselves when we begin to get stressed, whatever that might look like. Walking away from our desk to go make a new cup of tea. At the end of the day, perhaps it could be a favorite glass of wine. Maybe it's a meditation. Maybe it's sitting out amongst the trees with the dog on your lap. We want to help the family members build this individualized kit for each resident we will serve. In addition, the model of the Living Together program is what many of us over the years have known as life skills, and really trying to embark on doing together versus for, and helping residents to maintain independence and participating in the day in ways that are realistic for their ability. And that, I think there's something everyone can contribute, and it's a matter of what they can still do well or want to do. And you'll have those residents who say, I worked my whole life, sweetie, and I don't want to help you, and that's okay too. But sweeping, sorting, folding, and doing for others is exciting. We like to honor our residents prompted by the birthday as the day that we will do something to honor a preferred spa service or a dinner for 4. And that's a great prompt by using resident birthday to showcase that history of the resident, getting it out of the chart and available to honor that resident throughout the community. As anybody knows, the importance of recreation, having 5 events per day based in the 7 dimensions of wellness is obviously our foundation. Making sure we're committed to being out in the community regularly and therapeutic intent, thinking about successful and realistic outings that can work. And then knowing about the importance of person-centered care, having 8 more individualized activity kits that can be created to do more small group individual kits. And that's going to depend on who lives with us. That could be a teacher and they have different teacher-related items that they may reminisce or like to look at old worksheets. It could be a gentleman who always did woodworking and now we want to have ability to sand wood for the kits that we'll make for children. So having those built depends on who the residents actually are. I would like to reference the Flourish review process. This is, I believe, having done skilled nursing, long-term care, and the senior living world, there's such a variety of the paperwork expectations. This is a process to collectively have the whole team have a conversation about every resident, using definitions, with a green highlighter, a pink highlighter, and a yellow highlighter. And green means they are flourishing. They are having a great day. They are not just getting room and board. Their life is better because of us. And then we have to explain why that would be green. And it might be something that they're the jokester of the place and they don't do group activities, but they always have a laugh and they like to think they're in charge and they run the place and they think that it's their building. Yellow is someone we keep an eye on, but pink might be a person-centered focused resident. We then work through a process to brainstorm and assign a secret kind of focused ambassador who will spend more directed time trying to encourage, motivate, spend time with that resident in their room. And really, as you can imagine, you never want to have forgotten folks in any of our settings. This would allow for us to keep a pulse on this process that is done at least quarterly, that individual would be bright, bright green if we all put our heads together to brainstorm on how we can all touch this resident and help them flourish. Family services. I know sometimes our families need as much as the residents themselves, and it can be so trying. So being that person that can provide information, we try to help families look at a potential adaptive equipment to help their loved ones stay independent. Maybe it's a phone that only rings by pressing the picture of the daughter. Maybe it's a phone that only rings in and doesn't ring out. Maybe it's non-rinse bathing products. Trying to be resourceful to families. Having a monthly family and friends social. We believe and have found that everybody likes to have something to look forward to. So together we plan a party on a monthly basis and we think about the theme and the party favors and what we're going to cook and what we're going to serve and who wants to be the hostess for this party. And it really gives people a collective opportunity to feel hopeful, which we all need in human nature. And then another nice twist here when done correctly through HR is that the team members are encouraged to let their family members come and experience maybe where mom or dad works and everyone gets to have a chance to be in relationship. Really has a nice touch each month. Our Partners for a Purpose is a support program where we want to let, again, our families know who we are, provide education literature that might be personalized to where their loved one is in their journey. And then we also do provide the virtual dementia tour on a quarterly basis will be an effort we are currently putting into place. But the virtual dementia tour is a small opportunity to experience what it might be like to live in someone's shoes who's living with the disease. That is a patented and trademarked program that is available through Second Wind Dreams, and we are finding very powerful. Dining, as we know, food is important to all of us, making sure that there can always be food available, just like home, that we don't have to call to the kitchen. The team members are encouraged to sit with and alongside of our residents so that they can enjoy the meal together versus doing for someone. And adapting the menu to ability and preference is so important. We want to have a focused emphasis on hydration, meaning 3 meals a day. We offer water in addition to the 3 morning, afternoon, and evening activity programs that is assigned through the daily assignment sheet for the staff. We are committed to competency, as I'm sure all of your settings, if you're in the senior living industry, we all have different techniques and ways we embark on this. In this senior living example, we certify through the International Council for Certified Dementia Practitioners within 6 months of hire. And our caregivers also go through the same sensitivity training I mentioned earlier, the virtual dementia tour. And then I'm sure as many of us as well do, we look for particular skills, particular personality traits. And what we have found is by building behavioral interviewing questions that will look to the ability to be agile and flexible and creative, have tended to pull apart team members who tend to do the best in our memory care environments. So I wrap up today with a closing thought about Elliot. I had shared earlier I would talk a little bit more about him. Elliot was an individual. Now I've moved on from my skilled nursing home setting with the stop sign to what I thought was like research renowned, everything I'd ever read about in research of a memory care environment that was more of a social model senior living setting. And he came out each day in his tweed coat and bow tie, but there was no doubt it always looked a little bulky. And when I got to looking closer, he usually would have 2 pairs of pajamas on under that esteemed, dignified clothing. However, he would mention when he could talk and was able to articulate that he thought everything we did was child's play, and he was offended. He had helped, was an architect who was esteemed and helped build a university, and so no form of fitness or sing-along or ice cream socials, they all offended him. And so we got to listening to NPR and having a stiff cup of black coffee, and over time through his garbled speech, he now, at the point of this picture that is up on the screen, was really not even walking safely necessarily or able to form a necessarily articulate sentence. However, I think to me this is just such a good reminder, and I keep it on my desk framed as a reminder every day that we don't know, and each of us have these stories. So I appreciate you taking these 30 minutes or so to listen to a couple of thoughts today, and I know you each have your own. But it's always a good thing to keep those little reminders that, we've got to excite the team members around us to be passionate, to look for what abilities still remain. And just by giving him colored pencils and this beautiful watercolor paper, here this gentleman towards the end of his life could still make such beautiful artwork and flourishing. So I appreciate the chance to share a little bit today with everyone on some of these concepts. And Dawn, I'd like to turn it back over to you.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Rochelle. That's absolutely fabulous. And I know I took lots of notes myself, so I'm sure that there were other people who took notes as well. And I did do your little alphabetizing of the months of the year, and it definitely took my brain to places it doesn't normally go. So thank you for that. Yeah. So I just want that was terrific. I just want to encourage everyone to send in some questions through the chat box, and also wanted to let everyone know that Bay Bridge Seniors Health is actually hiring. So if you're interested in any positions with this fabulous organization, please feel free to take a look at the link I just put in the chat box. But I'm going to turn to some of the questions that have come in now. And like I said, we will also be putting up a survey that we would appreciate you filling out. We'll go from there. So the first question for you, Rochelle, is what is your perspective on Montessori for seniors struggling with dementia?
I appreciate that coming up. I believe there is great value in having a collective variety of different theories and processes, and even ourselves as we've created memory care programs. In some instances, my partner and colleague in one of our first memory care neighborhood was Bay Bridge, the way we kind of approached it is to say, if we have an a la carte menu, if we have all of these components available to us and we can think about, I mean, it's just person-centered care at its finest to say, I really think this Montessori kit is the right fit for this individual. It absolutely is based in the concepts of person-centered care. I've had some very, very initial understanding of the theory and the approach to care over the years at different times, and I have most recently, I feel like it's really an exciting breakthrough that's coming back to be very forward thinking in the industry. So I think for everyone, it is always worth doing a thorough deep dive and getting that tool belt of all kinds of things that might make good days for your residents, including Montessori, if it seems like the right fit for your organization.
Great, thanks, Rochelle. Another question here is, do you have any recommendations on how to train and prepare staff to actually provide person-centered care?
Great question. I feel like, I don't know, I wish I knew the collective group on the call today if we're made up of administrators or nurses or recreation professionals, but, in general, it's an oxymoron to ask someone who would choose to tend to work in healthcare to sit for 8 hours. It's kind of a hard disconnect, but yet is needed. We have really found some success with doing various practical application scavenger hunts, and or, for example, for the newly hired team member, perhaps it actually pairs this new hire with one individual that they will actually go through and complete the discovery process. So imagine being able to document person-centered care training, and all this team member is doing is getting tethered to what they chose to do, which is spending 2 hours with a resident, having a cup of tea or a cup of coffee, and completing the interview process in its entirety and getting to know a resident. Some examples how the scavenger hunt I mentioned may play out. go to 215, and we've thought of residents who would enjoy the visit, knock on the door and ask to find out what Fred's favorite flavor of ice cream is. Go to 309 and introduce yourself to Erdl and look at where she was the first female to graduate from what university, and they have to list what university they studied at. So you can see how you can push kind of person-centered care to real application by going in an approach like that. So that would, yeah, Dawn, and I would, as I mentioned before, the virtual dementia tour, which is not affiliated with us, but with Second Wind Dreams, we also find powerful for sensitivity training as well.
Great, excellent. Thank you so much for that answer. Another question that we have here is, are there any vendors or resources that you find helpful in carrying out or implementing person-centered care?
Well, as mentioned earlier, those two websites that had the framework for person-centered care as well as the campaign for quality care, if that's just validation for all the participants on the call today and you're all familiar with those, that's wonderful. But anything you can do to be sure your leadership teams where you work are familiar with those, there's really great emphasis so that everyone kind of feels and understands those. As well as allstore.com, that I have found to be kind of a clearinghouse for all things trying to help people living with memory loss, both in home and in residential settings. And that is ALZSTORE.com. And I assume, again, many of you may be familiar with that vendor, but I have found many resources, even I think it's broken out by the stage of the disease, early, middle, late, which has been helpful. I also would reference with the preventative reassurance concept, we are going to be embarking on creating so I mentioned little techniques that could be done through just leaving a voicemail or the typed statement, but soundexpressiongreetings.com, you can purchase greeting cards that have up to 80 seconds of recording time. And I just thought, what a wonderful way to build that into a memory care program where each family can design a personalized recording that the team member could access for their loved one. So those are just a couple that I have found to be helpful.
Well, you're absolutely a wealth of resources. Thank you so much, Rochelle.
Sure.
So this program that you've described, it sounds like people are just going to be flocking there, but is there a particular location where it's actually in place already?
Our first memory care neighborhood that was designed and in place currently is in the Marley, which is in Unionville in Toronto on 34 Main Street. So there certainly is more information on the internet to access that location. But it's exciting to be, you know, for all of us, I'm sure at different points over our journey in our careers, together working to help open the newest community, and then we've just opened a second location in Midland, Ontario as well.
Okay, fabulous. Thank you. So are there any guidelines that you have used to help you formulate this program?
Well, that would go back to the two links that really were provided earlier on in the webinar, the campaign for quality care and the framework for person-centered care, the two documents that really kind of, as I mentioned, were a little bit of the collective recipe or framework that industry leaders would want to see in place. I would say that really is a starting point.
Okay, fabulous. Thank you. And I put that into the chat box a couple of times, and it was in your presentation for people looking at this after the fact. So here, another question for you that's come in is, what is the difference between a long-term care setting and a senior living setting for residents with memory loss?
Well, that's a good question as well. I think it's almost the a la carte menu I mentioned earlier, that it just could depend for each individual what is right and potentially what is possible for various reasons. Could be family preference and comfort, the physician's involvement, potentially assets or ability for funding. But overall, there is such a spectrum of where people who are living with memory loss could have their needs met. That could be a caregiver in their private home. It could be an adult daycare setting. It could be memory care specialty assisted living. the long-term care setting, typically, depending if our participants are here joining us from Canada or in the United States, because we do practice in both, you know, that is a setting that could have additional capacities or could be available if someone was more frail and did need more focused healthcare support. So I think, again, it kind of goes back to that, I said it's a little bit of a interdisciplinary discussion for everyone to try to determine what is right. I think long-term care settings and memory care senior living settings, I think everyone's really been impassioned to look at culture change. So that's been exciting that while some environments could be more purpose-built or therapeutic intent just because it was thought out that way and built for that purpose, you know, long-term care settings are really committed, many instances, things such as Eden Alternative or culture change transformation, maybe some of the things people in long-term care could be participating in as well as the ever-growing population of memory care has increased. So that's just a little overview, but certainly much more information on the internet that can tease out what might be best for someone as well.
Okay, excellent. Well, we just have another 1 or 2 questions, but thank you very much. So I'll just encourage anybody who has another question to send it in now before we're at the top of the hour. So Rochelle, are there any special certifications that people should consider who are looking at or are involved at working in the field of memory care?
That, you know, is an exciting thing, that exciting and scary, that, you know, the growing population and what they say about the baby boom and the ability to have enough prepared team members in place, you know, it's just such a need. So if there is a passion or a heart for this, there are so many different things to look into. You know, there are certifications such as what I studied in university back in the day, you know, recreational therapy, then you pick a specialty that you may prefer. You know, obviously occupational therapy, sociology, psychology, healthcare administration, so many of those areas of study could then have a specialized focus, with gerontology certificates are something to consider depending on what people's interests are. As I mentioned earlier, the International Council for Certified Dementia Practitioners, if that's new to anyone on the line today, they are an organization committed to competency and do have coursework that can prepare someone to be available and eligible to apply to be a certified dementia practitioner as well. So I think, you know, there's a lot that's coming down the pike in specialty education to be prepared to help our seniors, but those would be a couple I would think of.
Great. Well, thanks, Rochelle. So maybe the second to last question, I know you listed a number of resources and websites. Is there anything else that you haven't mentioned that you wanted to also mention, just to give you an opportunity to say anything else? If not, then we can go on.
No, I believe I just always like to keep forward thinking, and a good old faithful Google really can sometimes keep us fresh with, you know, if I'm looking for new techniques for sensitivity training for staff or family education. I've really found there's some real groundbreaking technology companies that I've found just through Googling, even through preventative reassurance concepts I was looking into. So that to me, I'm kind of an investigator. Sometimes some of the quarterly journals, activity professional quarterly journals, or the Alzheimer's Care quarterly journals, I have not recently partaken in reading of those, but in my past I've found those to be helpful as well.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Rochelle. This is, again, Rochelle Blau, who is the Vice President of Life Enrichment and Innovation from Bay Bridge Senior Living. Anything you want to say as closing remarks, Rochelle?
No, if you're still on the line as a participant, you obviously have an interest or a passion for this area yourself, and it's just, I hope somewhere along the line, perhaps we'll meet in person at a conference, but thank you for your time and attention. We realize any of us in the field of senior living or healthcare sitting still for 30, 45, or close to 60 minutes is close to impossible. So thank you for allowing me to spend some time with you via the virtual world.
Great. Well, thanks so much, Rochelle, and we look forward to having lots of people watch your video after it's been posted online, and maybe it'll go viral. You never know. Thanks again.
Bye, everybody. Have a good rest of your day.
Take care. Bye now.